All right, welcome to the Two Sons Podcast. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy Prison Break Day, the day we've long been waiting for, that we thought was coming last week, but ended up coming this week. We are going to be covering episode 10 of Andor today, as well as the final two episodes of Tales of the Jedi, which we watched together on Sunday night, I believe.
Yeah.
Right after we recorded the show.
Yeah, I know, right? It was kind of odd timing for that.
Hey. Also, support was great for the last episode, so thank you guys. It was good to see a little bit of it was bumming us out a little bit that we started this to do Star Wars, and then everyone was just coming for Game of Thrones.
I
content.
know. But we did get a really good comment too. Did you see that? About so someone's theory is that Deidre is Cassian's sister.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
I like it.
I like it too. It would. We're due for another turncoat somewhere in here.
For sure.
We did discover a new one today.
For sure. Lonnie.
You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you guys don't miss any more of our videos. I also will put a little link in the video description that will show all of our social media profiles so you guys can subscribe to that as well. Let's start with Tales of the Jedi, though. So we watched 5 and 6, which is basically Ahsoka trains for Order 66 unknowingly, and then her dealing with the Inquisitor on the weird farm planet. So I wanted to start with the first one. So and really, I really only have one thought. To me, that was classic, just Dave Filoni in his bag.
I know,
because it was just like it's a little detail, something that like. It's one of those episodes that like doesn't carry any deeper meaning to the plot or anything. All it is just like a little bit of extra depth to something we already knew.
Just a little token,
right?
A
little, and then a little bit of like dramatic irony of like, you know, they kind of split Anakin Skywalker from Vader as two different personalities,
right?
And they do that even to the extent of having him kind of oscillate between those two personalities in these moments where, like in the Obi-Wan episode where his face goes blue and then his face goes red.
I was thinking the exact same thing when you said that.
Or like the way his eyes change when he's talking to Ahsoka in the season finale of
where they go all yellow and
Sith. 2. Yeah, where he's like kind of like talking to her, and then all of a sudden it's like he changes back. So it's kind of like a multiple personalities thing. And this was a great example of that because it's like Order 66 was a crisis that Anakin brought upon Ahsoka in many ways, but he also was the one who prepared her for it. So it's kind of like an Anakin versus Vader type of thing again.
It really is. Actually, Anakin versus Vader. That is an interesting concept, right? But yeah, I can envision Dave Filoni just sitting on like an airplane because I'm sure he travels a ton, right? Mm-hmm. And I can just envision him just sitting there.
Star Wars money.
All of his space bones. No, but I can envision him just sitting there and him just thinking, that's a cool thought. I'll just, save that for later. Mm-hmm. Right? And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, Dave, we're going to do Tales of the Jedi. Do you want to like create some content for it? And him just being like, yeah, sure. And then him just like, oh yeah, like I've got a great idea for this. Who knows how it actually happened, but that's how I envision those things where like, I just feel like he's got this like bag of tricks that, there's all this amazing Star Wars content that Disney could tap into at some point.
Well, you imagine, you spend a lot of time as a Star Wars fan kind of like imagining different scenarios. Like, oh, this is what it must have been like when this happened. Or this is what it must have been like when that happened. And there's, you and I are big believers in, dude, pick another era and build it out.
Right.
As it pertains to the macro topics like movies or like
especially movies.
TV series. At least some of the TV series should be geared towards something like that. But
namely because, sorry to cut you off, because they're having people produce these movies who don't know Star Wars. Yeah. Right? So that's why I want them to get out of the era.
For sure. But there is value in building out the little finer details of the original Star Wars story. And honestly, things like Tales of the Jedi are a great way to do it. Yeah. And you're right. Like I would literally just imagine a notebook somewhere that Filoni, maybe it's just on his phone, maybe it's something he carries around where he's just writing stuff down like, oh, this is how I imagined Dooku turning to the dark side.
Yeah.
This is how I imagined, Ahsoka being discovered as a Jedi. This is how I imagined Ahsoka's return to the rebellion, like that kind of thing, and getting to paint that all out and getting to see that come to fruition is really cool. But I have a question for you. So, or not even a question, it's a request. You read a book called Ahsoka.
Yes.
It was prominently on my set during the entire 2021-2022 NBA campaign. No longer. But this is a book I have not read that you gave to me and I didn't read. Once again, more bad friend stuff out here. My friends just getting exposed. But my question for you is, like, you saw a direct parallel from the final episode, which is Ahsoka kind of in a farming situation where she gets ratted out for being a Jedi and she has to kill an Inquisitor.
Right.
Tell us kind of like what you thought of from the book when you saw that scene.
Yeah. So overall, the book was good. It's definitely a book to read. Maybe something that you and I do if they've got an audiobook version. I will say
that is very different than you said that night.
No,
like,
well,
this book is boring.
No, well, that's my intro, Jay. Okay. That's my intro. Okay, so yes, it's a book to read. It's a little bit boring.
Okay.
Like, you and I were kidding around about when we saw the trailers come out for Obi-Wan, and we're like, what is Obi-Wan movie going to be, or a TV show going to be about? Like, Obi-Wan plays Sabacc, and like Obi-Wan
draws in the sand.
yeah. Like, what are these episodes going to be? But that's kind of what the Ahsoka book was. Is like, it was a lot of her hiding. It was a lot of her just kind of like waiting in the shadows. Like, she goes by the name Ashla, which shows its face. That name gets brought up in
the light side of the Force.
Oh, right? Does it really?
If I'm not mistaken, Ashla is if I remember correctly, the original Jedi. The Jedi. The original.
Jason's getting fancy tonight.
I remember reading somewhere where it's like JED and then there's like an apostrophe.
And where they changed. Yeah, okay.
But the original Jedi referred to the dark side as something I can't remember. I think it's like Visla and Ashla, or Vishla or Ashla or something like that. But Ashla specifically, I think, referred to the light side of the Force.
Oh, I see.
If I remember correctly.
But yeah, so it's like a lot of her just kind of sitting around. But then it's cool because in the book, she comes face to face with an Inquisitor. And in all honesty, I read the book years ago, and I can't remember exactly how it happened. And I feel like that's a different Inquisitor than
you think so?
The climax of the book. Don't quote me on that, though. But what's cool about the book is it also talks about how her lightsabers become essentially white. And I don't know if I should talk about it.
Yeah, do it just real quick.
All right, so huge spoiler alert. So tune out for the next 25 seconds. If you plan on
reading the boring Ahsoka book, then do not listen to the next 30 seconds.
So essentially, she obtains kyber crystals from, I think it was from an Inquisitor that she had killed. And she essentially, so just like the Sith, almost like hex kyber crystals and turn them red, or from what I understand too, Sith kyber crystals can even be synthetic.
That's actually a bit of Star Wars lore that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, I feel like we need to brush up on that.
Explain to us in the comments if you're a Star Wars nerd and you know how Sith lightsaber crystals turn out red.
Yeah, but she essentially does the opposite and she cleanses them, and which is how they become white, which is super, super cool.
That is really cool. I did like. I mean, we don't have to get into the details of the episode necessarily, but just in general, the imagery of the Inquisitor.
Yeah.
The imagery surrounding dark side Force users is so interesting to me. A couple things, like his lightsaber sounded exactly like Kylo Ren. It had that very like kind of like buzzy, like distorted sound to it. The flames around him, the hood. There was even this weird thing that happened when his head got cut off because Ahsoka just straight up owns this dude. Like,
just no time at all.
Dude, yeah, that was a humiliating defeat. He was not very strong in the dark side of the Force.
No. It was like when Obi-Wan defeats Darth Maul for the second time.
Yeah, that's a great
super quick. Like, it was like, I know what this man's about to do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to destroy him.
Exactly. Like, she didn't even need a lightsaber to beat him.
No. She just showed up. Not even with a knife to a gunfight. She just showed up.
Yeah, she was just there. It was an epic takedown. But
yeah,
I thought it was interesting when his head got cut off. How like when it landed on the ground, it kind of like deflated.
It did.
It kind of reminded me. The only real example that we've seen of this is like we've seen Jedi that disappear when they become one with the Force. Although that was a thing that took place after Qui-Gon figured it out because it didn't happen until the sequel or the original trilogy, not in the prequel trilogy.
When Obi-Wan dies.
Stayed alive. Yeah, so it was clearly
spoiler, Obi-Wan dies.
Yes, Obi-Wan does in fact die. But it's clear that Qui-Gon Jinn clearly discovers the whole like becoming one with the Force thing where your body disappears or whatever. But the only other example we've seen in Star Wars of bodily changes after death is the Changeling in Clone Wars. When it gets killed by Boba Fett's little like saber-tooth dart from Kamino. basically she like shrivels up and like disappears. So it's like a little bit of Star Wars. Like we may never learn another thing about that Inquisitor.
Right.
We may never learn another thing. We may never know what kind of species he is because he has a
Right.
mask on. But it's such like a cool, like just like random little, like how cool would it be if his head just like deflated when he was,
I know, right?
like a little detail, like
Yeah.
some sort of weird Star Wars, like,
and it just
question
opens
mark.
things up for Dave Filoni's bag of tricks, right?
exactly.
So he can just bust that out and be like, Jason and Luke, even though I don't know who you guys are, I've got some news for you, and I'll tell you in 3 years. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like he just thinks of everything, which is cool.
Dude, Inquisitors have like a weird ego too.
They do.
Like they're so full of themselves, and you know, it's funny because we're about to meet another new Inquisitor next year with the Jedi Fallen Order sequel. Which, by the way, I have now confirmed through people that follow me on Twitter that you can actually buy a PS5. So they're available-ish if you make phone calls. So at some point. And there's some really good God of War game that's like based on like Norse mythology.
No way.
And then the Star Wars game coming out next year. So I think I'm like within 6 months of buying a PS5. And when I do, we're gonna get Jedi Fallen Order, the sequel, which I think is called I can't remember exactly what it's called. But we're definitely gonna do a bunch of content around that game because I think the original was the best Star Wars game I've ever played. But this one, there in the trailer, there was a kind of an indirect reference, or what appeared to be another Inquisitor, one that we have not seen before, one that is the same race as the Grand Inquisitor.
Oh, I see.
Not sure, but we know he's not the Grand Inquisitor because at least I don't think he is. But he kind of has like a whole like a vibe to him where he's almost acting like a Sith Lord. Like he sits in a big ballroom like office with like a fancy desk, and he kind of like sits behind the desk like this.
I'm surprised that that's even allowed.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, and that's the thing. Like you could tell like these guys are like they're almost like the dudes who are like on the Division I team, but that don't actually play in the rotation. But like, there's like 3 future NBA players that are actually on the team. They're like, dude, I'm on the team, bro.
Right,
like, that's kind of the vibe I get from.
No, I totally get that. I totally get that. But yeah, I mean, Tales of the Jedi. I was a little bit disappointed when I saw how short the episodes were, but after I started watching them, it totally made sense and it totally worked. I'm excited to show Luke Jr.
Dude,
someday.
Outstanding Star Wars content.
Right?
Yeah.
It's
Luke Jr.
incredible.
I saw his face for the first time the other day, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Carly showed
Ultrasound.
me the picture. Congratulations,
Yeah. Thanks, buddy.
That had to have been a big moment for you.
Oh, it's incredible. It's just wild to see that. Like a little beating heart. You could see his tongue.
Really?
He was like...
He was sucking his thumb,
He was
I thought.
sucking his thumb, and you could see his tongue like retracting.
Dude,
it was
that's
so cool. It's just incredible.
Yeah, Carly showed me that the other day, and I immediately thought of you. I was like, that had just been a really cool moment.
It's super cool.
Was I reading the thing right that he's already 11 centimeters long?
So honestly, I'm not sure about my son's stats. I need to know his stats.
Can I get some measurables? A little pre-draft measurable thing.
I know that he's like a week ahead in regards to size, which is not a good thing. But okay, so
you think it might interfere with our ski trip?
No. I think nothing interferes with our ski trip.
Yes.
No,
to be clear.
no. Elena's not a very big person.
Yes,
and I'm worried about
very small.
Like my genetics, which is a big German Irishman type genetics, like being housed in Elena's body.
Yeah, it'll be a thing.
Yeah. So so we're not going for super big, until he's out and about.
Yeah. But then from there we want super big.
Yeah, we want super big.
We want NBA power forward.
We want NBA power forward. We want Rob Gronkowski type physique.
So funny.
Yeah. I will. One other thing. The ultrasound tech was impressed by my son's endowed
Hell yeah,
nature.
dude. Hell yeah. Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, she's like, oh yeah, he's definitely a boy. I'm like,
so funny.
Yeah.
All right. I have 15 minutes before I have to start working, so we're going to get
Real
our Andor episode 10, which it wasn't not a ton happened. It was just a lot of action in this episode, which is a nice mix up from previous episodes. So we had 3 real elements here. We had the prison break, which we'll start with. Then Mon Mothma meets with the gangster, whose name I'm forgetting, Davos Skolden. And then we have the ISB plant that is working for Luthen and meets with Luthen, which we'll get to. Starting with the prison break. The everything about Star Wars to me is the feeling of urgency, and they do such a good job in the build up to Order 66, in the build up to the first Death Star, the build up to the second Death Star, even in Rebels, like the build up towards the final conflict,
Right.
on Lothal, there's this build up of urgency. It's such an important element. Like you have, if you don't feel true stakes in a movie or a TV show, then you won't be invested. It's kind of what I talked about with the White Walkers in Game of Thrones. They do such a good job through 7 seasons of building up an urgency that gets to this. They did such a good job with, like, Cassian's been in prison for what, 4 episodes now?
Yeah.
At least?
Has it
or
been?
3? It's been
at least 3. At least 3. I think at least 3.
Yeah,
3.
Yeah, I think at least 3. So he's been in prison for a while, but they did they went about the process of explaining why they had to escape.
Right.
You know, because as soon as he gets in, you're like, oh, Cassian's going to escape from prison at some point.
Right.
Like, he's not going to sit in here for 6 years. Like, Cassian's going to escape. But they had to show you why, like, he had to escape.
For sure.
You know? And then, I mean, the escape itself was pretty straightforward. They short-circuit everything with the water.
Yep.
Then they basically storm up and take over the control center, deactivate all the floors,
Yeah.
climb to the top, and swim out.
Right.
Not an overly complicated process.
No.
But at the end of the day, like, it was, they knew that as soon as they tried to storm out of there, that a lot of people would die, and did.
Yeah.
And so there needed to be appropriate urgency to justify why people would try to get out.
Correct. And you're right. That's like, it was exciting, super fun to watch. Not much to analyze there. Like, it just was what it was. It was a
Great Star Wars moment.
Yeah, great Star Wars moment. I thought it was cool. There's one part that kind of took me out of it, though.
Okay, let's hear it.
One part. Actually, so one part that took me out of it, another part that put me right back in it, which was super cool.
All right. I'm intrigued.
So the part that took me out of it is, and I need to go back and rewatch because we literally just watched this, is as they're going through the small little areas that the guards like are housed in, they have all their boots on the wall, and like a quarter of the boots are still there. Most of them are taken off the wall. I'm pretty sure they had the exact same boot array in like at least 2 of the small little. So they
clearly refilmed that scene.
Yeah, they're in the exact same set. But
I would never in a million years notice something.
I could be
like
wrong.
that.
I could be wrong.
No, I believe you.
What brought me back into it is the music, like I expected it to, softened up. So, like leading into Andor and leading into like the prison, and actually inside of the prison, it was very like synth, and it created this like feeling of like disassociation and like discomfort. It softened up immediately when things started going the right way. When that speech was happening across like the intercom system, like the music was super cool in that.
I don't even remember the music.
And then what was super cool, shout out to the originals, is, you know, when Han Solo is, I think, yeah, it's on the Death Star, when he's like talking in the comm, when he's like wearing his stormtrooper gear, and he's like, "It's okay, everything's okay. How are you?"
Oh yeah.
That same intercom system setup was what they were using to talk to the entire like station during Andor.
Oh yeah,
like,
where
really
it
cool.
like it has like the 2 pipes that are almost like
It looks
sawed off at like a 45 degree
It looks like
angle.
a cruise ship like smokestack, 2 of them. Yeah, so that was cool.
Well, like literally George Lucas took like a couple of PVC pipe and like cut it at a 45 degree angle and painted it gray.
No,
like,
you're exactly right. Yeah, so that was cool. Like that was just again, good homework on the producer's part. So, but yeah, that scene was dope.
Do you think Kino died? It was left very unfinished.
Yeah,
which makes me think that we'll see him again.
I'd like to see him again. Sometimes even if you don't know how to swim, I feel like you could learn how to swim. You know what I mean? Like human beings have.
That's a good question.
We have the ability to swim, right? I feel like he could figure that out.
The problem with that though is like from what I like, swimming is very technique oriented in the sense that like you could also through floundering actually put yourself deeper underwater.
True,
because every reverse motion basically pushes water the other way. So like swimming is very like technique. You're going like up at a thin profile and down at a fat profile and up at a thin profile. Like if you don't know any better,
that's a good point.
Yeah, and like also fear.
Yeah.
Also just the sheer amount of people. The part that's confusing to me is you would think that like it's like just jump down there and maybe someone will help you.
True. But you're talking about all the people. That makes it really hard. I did that sprint triathlon not too long ago, and it's hordes of people all swimming together, and you're getting kicked in the face, and like people are brushing up against you, and you're getting like pushed side to side. That would be super hard to learn how to swim in that environment.
Super interesting. Yeah, and they had to swim a long way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Very far.
One last note there. My theory is that they were constructing something. My new theory is that they were constructing something for the Death Star, but we'll see.
I think you're right.
Because they were talking about how important that manufacturing is.
Right.
So 2 other quick notes to get into in this episode. So Mon Mothma meets with the gangster.
Mm-hmm.
And
Davo.
Davos Skolden, and it's pretty cut and dry. Not a whole lot to it.
Right.
He goes, they do one of those like, oh, we're 2 epic, really important, smart people, and we're gonna have some sort of weird like fake conversation where we clearly have ulterior motives, but we're gonna pretend like we're smarter than the other person, like, which is kind of a played out technique. But at the end, where it's like, this is the first time you didn't speak the truth to me, or something like that. But which, by the way, side note, that's like my biggest beef with that Secession show on HBO, which I genuinely enjoy, but every bit of dialogue from the start to the end of every episode is exactly like that scene.
It's probably exhausting.
And I'm like smart people don't even talk like this. Like, come on. Like, they talk like this sometimes, but like it's insane. Like, it's just, when I saw that, it's just like, it's almost like in Secession, it's like the show just has this like douchiness to it that comes off the screen. And like, I enjoyed Secession, for the record, but that was like when everyone, that was one of my little.
It sounds exhausting. I haven't seen it, of course.
So they have their little douchey argument with each other, but the gist of it is he's like, I'll give you the money, I'll help you hide your money if you let my son marry your daughter.
Pretty much.
And then she basically says no, and then he basically goes, and then she says, get the hell out of my house, basically. Yeah. And then on the way out the door, he's like, yeah, but you're thinking about it. And then that was pretty much. Did you have any thoughts from that scene?
No, I thought it was an interesting take. It was Game of Thrones-esque.
She's obviously going to capitulate, right?
You think she's going to go with it?
Why else would that scene exist? Unless it was just for him to become an enemy.
Or, yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know. Like, it
is very Game of Thrones-esque. That was a good point, because it's very like I'm the super important person, you're the super important.
Right. Let's marry our families.
Yeah, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to think that she doesn't do it, or maybe she does, and by the time that it actually matters is when the cat's already out of the bag and everyone knows who she is.
I'm curious. It'll be interesting to see.
Maybe that dawns on her, like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so deep, it doesn't even matter that this guy wants his son to marry my daughter, because we're going to be on some other planet somewhere, right?
Well, and that's the part that I would think is like Mon, like, do what you got to do. Like, you're going to be on the run here.
Yeah,
you know?
She doesn't realize that though. She's starting to.
She's starting to come to terms with the scale of what she's trying to do.
Right, but she still is very much so like fearful. And I think as soon as she realizes that she has no future with her current identity, or who everyone sees her as, I think the second that she realizes that, I think is when we start to see Mon Mothma as we know her, right?
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah,
I'm curious to see where they go. We only have 2 episodes left, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So we have this ISB scene where basically they pull off a like a snatch and release from a rebel pilot. They stage basically that he dies in a spacefaring accident of some kind.
Yeah,
freezes to death, and we have this character. What do you remember his name? The red-haired guy? Lonnie. Which is just a hilarious name for someone like that. Lonnie basically makes the suggestion like, hey, we should still follow up and inspect, because that'll and the ISB guy really likes it. And then we have this vague reference from Luthen in an earlier scene where he's going to meet with somebody that he hasn't met in a year. My guess was that it was going to be Bail Organa, which I was horribly wrong. He descends down an elevator, listening to an earpiece where he's basically given all of this additional information about everything that's going on that we've seen in the show. And then he gets to the bottom, and basically Lonnie's like, dude, I want to get out of this. I've got a kid now. This is way too stressful for me. And Luthen's basically like, yeah, that's not an option.
Right.
And then Lonnie pulls the, well, what have you sacrificed card? And then Luthen's like, everything.
No, Luthen gives this incredible speech, which he's right. You know, from the outside in, it probably looks like Luthen's just sitting pretty. He's got his shop. He's super wealthy. You know, he gets to do whatever he wants, but that's not true at all. He's literally given up any sense of comfort, which is what he mentions.
He specifically said like kinship. And I remember when I thought that, I was like, yeah, like if you were living a double life, how difficult would it be to have friendships? Like imagine if like you and I were trying to have a friendship, but like I had this entire other existence that you were unaware of, like how difficult that is, stressful that would be for me to not let that slip or something like that. And like you could tell, like his thing is like basically like I've given that up entirely. Like I don't do any of those things in favor of keeping my security. You know what I mean?
And any friends that he actually does have are people that he's literally sending into battle.
Yeah.
That
exactly.
and as we saw from the heist is those people are literally dying.
Mm-hmm. Did you have anything else from this episode?
No, that was it. I thought it was awesome. I'm really enjoying it. I'm bummed that there's only 2 more.
Yeah, a couple of specific theories. I feel Lonnie's gonna crack. Mon Mothma's husband is a major weakness.
Definitely.
I'm really curious how Melshi and Cassian get off of that planet. That's going to be interesting too.
Right. Yeah.
There's a bunch
that
of
desolate planet that's been just completely over
classic Empire over mining or whatever.
Right.
It is. But yeah, 2 episodes left, and then after that, I mean, I'm pretty sure I haven't looked yet, but I'm pretty sure our next High Republic book is already out.
Oh, really?
So we're gonna, and then we still have Thrawn, which we need to finish.
Yeah, 2 more Thrawn books.
Yeah, we have 2 more Thrawn books. So tons of like between. Basically, after we get through the next 2 weeks, we'll shift into more books type of stuff for a little while. And then honestly, like if you guys have, those of you who listen, if there's a specific major show that's out that you guys really like or something, like Luke and I are in the market for like one more content stream. So if you guys can think of something like, hey, like we both are big NFL fans, is there something that you guys would like to get into along those lines, whatever it is, just drop some feedback in the comments. And as always, we sincerely appreciate your support and we'll see you next week.
Thanks a lot.